Have you ever met someone who completely rewrote the blueprints of your life, when all you wanted was one quiet, ordinary night? Harper Linwood didn't believe in fate. She believed in logic, structure, and things that could be measured. The kind of woman who designed bridges that never failed. But on one stormy evening in Seattle, a blind date arranged by her persistent mother would lead her straight into the arms of Elias Grant, a man whose charm was as dangerous as it was magnetic, a man who would become her boss. By Monday morning, two people, one guided by reason, the other by risk, about to learn that love doesn't follow any blueprint. Hello, everyone, and welcome to Vale of Hearts, a place where love finds its way through the quietest corners of the soul. Tonight, let's dive into a story of unexpected connection. Sharp minds and hearts learning how to trust again. This is Blueprints of the Heart. Harper Linwood stared at her reflection in the bathroom mirror, the soft golden light above her flickering against her anxious eyes. She wasn't the kind of woman who ran from challenges. She built bridges for a living, calculated weight and resistance for structures that defied storms. And yet here she was, clutching her phone like a lifeline, contemplating whether disappearing out the bathroom window was a valid escape plan. Her mother's message glowed on the screen. "If you run, I'll post the video of you singing karaoke in 9th grade. You know the one." Harper groaned under her breath. Of course she would. Taking a deep breath, she adjusted the thin strap of her emerald dress and forced herself to face her reflection one last time. "It's just dinner," she whispered. "Not a lifetime contract." She pushed open the door. The low hum of jazz floated through the air as she stepped back into the restaurant, a dim, elegant Italian place where the wine cost more than her rent. The scent of basil and butter hung between tables covered in white linen. Somewhere between the flicker of candles and the quiet clinking of glasses, she spotted him, Elias Grant. He sat by the window, posture relaxed but deliberate, his tailored suit cutting clean lines across broad shoulders. He wasn't looking at her yet, his attention fixed on the menu, or maybe he was just pretending not to notice her. Either way, something about him made the air feel heavier. "Harper Linwood," she introduced herself when she finally reached the table. He looked up, and in that moment, she saw something flicker in his eyes. Interest. Maybe recognition, but it vanished as quickly as it appeared. "Elias Grant," he said, his voice low, smooth, and annoyingly calm. "Please, have a seat." For a few minutes, their conversation danced on the edge of polite small talk, weather, traffic, mutual disinterest. Then, somewhere between the appetizer and the wine list, their words sharpened. "You ordered without tasting the menu first?" she teased. "I make decisions quickly," he replied, not looking up. "It's efficient. Or reckless. Depends on the results." Harper smiled despite herself. He was infuriating, precisely. Dangerously so. If only she knew then that the man sitting across from her, the one who made her want to leave and stay at the same time, would soon become the one man she couldn't walk away from. The sound of distant laughter drifted through the restaurant as Harper sat across from Elias Grant, trying not to let her nerves show. Her fingers traced the rim of her wine glass, and she told herself she could handle this. It was just dinner, a temporary inconvenience to appease her mother. Nothing more. Across the table, Elias seemed carved from stillness itself, calm, composed, untouchable. The kind of man who never fidgeted, never looked unsure of anything. It was infuriating. "So," Harper began, hoping to sound casual. "You ordered the steak. Classic choice." Elias's lips curved slightly, though it wasn't quite a smile. "And you chose the pasta. Safe choice. Safe?" Her brow arched. "Only people who fear disappointment order pasta," he replied, still studying his menu. "It's predictable. Comfort over adventure." Harper leaned back, folding her arms. "And only people with control issues assume someone's entire personality based on what they eat." That earned her a small, genuine smirk. Fleeting, but there. "Touché. Thank you," she said sweetly. "I specialize in dismantling fragile male logic." "I can see that," Elias murmured, meeting her eyes for the first time. And just like that, the air shifted. His gaze was steady, analytical, but there was a glint of amusement, as though he enjoyed being challenged. Harper looked away first. Damn him. The waiter arrived with wine, and the clink of glasses broke the silence. To forced blind dates, Harper said, raising her glass. Elias clinked his gently against hers. And to surviving them. For a while, conversation flowed like the wine, sharp at first, then smoother as the edges softened. They talked about Seattle's unpredictable weather, travel, and eventually, their work. I'm a structural engineer, Harper said. Bridges, mainly. I design things that last. Bridges, Elias repeated thoughtfully. Interesting. I'm in renewable energy investment. I build things that power the future. She tilted her head. So, you fund projects. I build them. Something like that. He sipped his wine. But most people don't talk about engineering with passion in their eyes. I care about what connects people, Harper said simply. A bridge isn't just steel and concrete. It's trust. It carries thousands of lives safely every day. That matters. Elias's expression softened for the first time that night. That's poetic. From someone who deals in equations, Harper smiled faintly. Math has its poetry too. You just have to know where to look. The waiter returned with their meals, his steak, perfectly charred, her pasta, golden and glistening under soft light. The aroma filled the air, and for the first time since she sat down, Harper allowed herself to relax. Elias cut into his steak, observing her over the rim of his glass. You seem too intelligent to believe in these things, he said. In what? Blind dates, fairy tale moments, the kind of nonsense mothers insist will change your life. Harper laughed softly. I don't believe in them. I believe in data, design, and caffeine. But my mother is persuasive. Ah, Elias nodded knowingly. So, you're here under duress. Let's say it's mutual. He chuckled, a low sound that stirred something unexpected in her chest. For the first time, she noticed the faint crease at the corner of his mouth when he smiled. Rare, but real. Minutes turned into an hour. The conversation deepened, no longer about food or formality, but about dreams, about failures, about how both of them had once built things that fell apart, professionally and personally. You know, Elias said, his voice quieter now. There's something admirable about people who build bridges. It takes faith to connect what was once separate. Harper looked up, surprised by the sincerity in his tone. And it takes courage to fund something that might collapse. He held her gaze for a long, charged moment. I guess we're both in the business of risk. The music shifted, a slower tune, softer, intimate. A few couples nearby leaned closer over candlelight. Harper felt the warmth of the wine in her veins and the pull of something she didn't want to name. Would you like to try? Elias asked suddenly, cutting a small piece of his steak. She blinked. Excuse me? He lifted his fork slightly toward her, the offer unspoken but clear. You should know what adventure tastes like. It was reckless, absurd, and yet she leaned forward. Her lips brushed the edge of the fork as she took the bite, her pulse quickening. The steak was tender, smoky, perfect. Well, he asked quietly. It's good, she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. Elias leaned back, satisfied. Sometimes risk pays off. Don't get used to being right, she countered, though her tone had softened. Silence settled between them. Not awkward this time, but thick with something else entirely. Their eyes lingered too long, breath sinking unconsciously, until the background noise of the restaurant seemed to fade away. Elias's hand brushed the edge of her wineglass, his fingers almost touching hers. Harper felt the electricity of it, the tiniest spark that made her forget logic. Equations, the very air she breathed. Before she could think, before she could calculate the consequences, she leaned forward, just slightly, and their lips met. It wasn't planned. It wasn't polite. It was a heartbeat, a collision, a moment that silenced the world. When she pulled away, her heart was racing. That shouldn't have happened, Elias finished for her, though his tone carried no regret. Harper stood abruptly, clutching her purse like armor. This was a mistake. Thank you for dinner. Harper. But she was already walking toward the door, her heels clicking against the marble floor like punctuation marks to her panic. Elias watched her leave, the ghost of a smile tugging at his lips. He hadn't planned for this either, and yet something told him this wasn't the end. Not even close. Harper thought it was just a strange evening, an awkward night to be forgotten. But fate wasn't done with her yet. Morning light spilled through the glass walls of Northbridge Engineering, turning the polished floor into a mirror of gold. Harper Linwood walked in with a coffee in one hand and a folder in the other, still pretending she hadn't been replaying last Friday night in her head for the entire weekend. That kiss. That stupid, impulsive, perfect kiss. She had convinced herself it didn't matter, that it was just a spark in a storm, a mistake both adults could easily move past. By Monday morning, she was ready to bury it under deadlines, design drafts, and the comforting hum of fluorescent lights. The office buzzed with excitement. Leah, her closest friend and coworker, nearly skipped toward her desk. "Morning. You picked the best day to show up early," Leah said, waving a stack of papers. "Big announcement today. New investor, new project. Apparently someone major from the energy sector." Harper managed a tired smile. "Fantastic. More spreadsheets and impossible timelines. You say that now? But rumor has it he's..." Leah lowered her voice dramatically. "Young, brilliant, and sinfully good-looking." Harper chuckled into her coffee. "Yeah? Maybe I'll finally meet a man who doesn't critique my choice of pasta." Leah blinked. "What?" "Nothing," Harper said quickly, her cheeks warming. The intercom chimed. "All staff to the main conference room, please." Within minutes, the entire design team gathered, murmurs filling the air, the sound of chairs scraping against the floor. Harper found a spot near the back, notebook in hand, ready to look attentive. Then the door opened. The CEO of Northbridge, Mr. Callahan, walked in first, all smiles and corporate charisma. Behind him, Harper froze, Elias Grant. He looked different in daylight, sharper somehow. The confidence that had felt magnetic over dinner now radiated with professional precision. His charcoal gray suit fit him like it had been designed for the occasion. And yet his eyes, those calm, knowing eyes, flicked across the room and landed on her. For half a second, everything inside her stopped. Then his expression smoothed into polite detachment, the kind reserved for strangers. Mr. Callahan clapped his hands. "Everyone, please welcome our new lead investor for the Evergreen Bridge project, Mr. Elias Grant, founder of Helios Energy Group." Applause followed, but Harper barely heard it. Her stomach dropped somewhere around her knees. Elias stepped forward, his voice steady and smooth as he addressed the room. "It's an honor to collaborate with Northbridge on this project. Sustainability and innovation are more than goals. They're responsibilities." His gaze brushed past her again. Deliberate, unflinching. "And I look forward to working closely with your lead engineer, Ms. Harper Linwood." Her pen slipped from her fingers and clattered onto the floor. Leah glanced over, whispering, "Are you okay?" "Fine," Harper said through a thin smile. Completely fine. She wasn't. After the meeting, Harper tried to escape, but Leah intercepted her near the coffee station. "Okay, what was that?" "You looked like you'd seen a ghost." Harper hesitated. "More like a bad decision wearing a very expensive suit." Leah's jaw dropped. "You know him?" Harper sighed. "It's complicated." "Complicated how?" "I may have kissed him. Once, maybe twice. It was a blind date. My mother's fault. Long story." Leah's laugh was too loud. "Harper, that's our investor." "Oh my God, this is straight out of a rom-com." "Yeah," Harper muttered, "except the romantic part is dead, and I'm living the calm." Before Leah could say more, a deep voice interrupted. "Ms. Linwood," Harper turned. Elias stood a few feet away, composed as ever, holding a folder. His tone was strictly professional. "Do you have a moment? I'd like to review the bridge schematics before the design meeting tomorrow." "Of course," Harper said, forcing a smile. "My office?" As soon as they stepped inside, the door closed softly behind them. Silence filled the room. Heavy, electric, and completely unprofessional. Elias set the folder on her desk but didn't speak. For a long moment, they just looked at each other, neither willing to break first. Finally, Harper exhaled. "You could have warned me. I didn't plan this," Elias said evenly. "Believe me, I was just as surprised." "Surprised?" she repeated, incredulous. "You're standing in my office as my investor. That's not surprise. That's cosmic humiliation." He almost smiled. "You're overreacting." "Oh, I'm sorry. Do you often kiss your business partners before the first meeting?" His composure faltered for just a heartbeat. That night was unexpected. "Understatement of the year," Harper muttered. Elias took a step closer. "Look, Harper, whatever that was, whatever we were, it can't interfere with this project. We both have reputations to protect." She met his eyes, cold and steady. "Don't worry, Mr. Grant. My professionalism doesn't depend on my personal life." For a second, something flickered in his gaze. Regret, maybe admiration. But it vanished as quickly as it came. He nodded once, picked up the folder, and left the office without another word. Harper sank into her chair, her pulse still racing. Outside the glass wall, Leah peeked in with a knowing grin. Harper shot her a glare that could melt steel. Leah mouthed, "Chemistry." Harper rolled her eyes. "Disaster," she whispered back. The rest of the day blurred by in meetings and forced smiles. Every time she spoke in front of the team, she could feel Elias's presence, the weight of his gaze, steady but unreadable. He didn't cross boundaries, didn't slip, didn't even look at her for longer than necessary, and somehow that made it worse. By late afternoon, Harper was the last to leave the office. The city outside shimmered in soft evening light, reflections dancing across glass and water. She stood by the window, staring at the unfinished bridge design on her tablet. Her voice, soft but steady, filled the silence. Love never asks for permission, but when it walks into your workplace wearing a suit and a perfect smile, it becomes dangerous. She closed her eyes, exhaling slowly. And somewhere down the hallway, Elias Grant paused by the door, listening, his expression unreadable, his pulse just a little faster than before. For days after that Monday meeting, Harper Linwood lived in quiet chaos. She showed up early, left late, smiled through meetings, and spoke to Elias Grant only when professionalism demanded it. Every interaction between them felt choreographed, rehearsed, clipped, painfully careful. And yet, beneath that thin layer of control, tension coiled tight. He lingered near her desk more often than necessary. "Just checking the updated bridge model," he'd say. Or, "I wanted to make sure we're aligned on the sustainability report." But Harper wasn't naive. She knew he didn't need to personally review every blueprint she drafted. Still, she didn't stop him. Sometimes, their eyes met across the room, fleeting seconds charged with everything they weren't saying. Sometimes, in meetings, his voice would drop low when he said her name, and she'd feel it in her chest like a secret she shouldn't keep. Days turned into weeks. The project moved forward, but the line between them blurred more with every late-night edit, every shared silence. It was Thursday night when the inevitable finally found them. The office was empty, long past midnight. Outside, rain swept across Seattle's skyline, streaking silver against the tall glass windows. The city hummed below, alive but distant, as if the rest of the world had quietly stepped away, leaving only the two of them suspended in time. Harper sat at her drafting table, eyes heavy with fatigue, staring at the stress load simulation on her monitor. Numbers floated and twisted in her mind like ghosts. A soft knock sounded at the door. She didn't need to look up. "You know, there's such a thing as business hours." Elias stepped inside anyway, holding 2 cups of coffee. "You've been here since 7. I lost track of time. I noticed. He set the coffee beside her elbow. "You're rerunning the crosswind model again." "It's off by a fraction," she muttered. "If the load distribution isn't perfect, the bridge could twist under pressure." He leaned against her desk, arms crossed, studying her screen. You design like you're afraid to fail, her jaw tightened. No, I design so it won't fail. That's not what I mean, he said quietly. You design like you're afraid to fall. The words hit harder than she wanted them to. Harper turned to face him, her voice sharp. And you invest like you're afraid to feel. Silence. The hum of the rain filled the room, soft and relentless. Elias's eyes held hers. Not cold, not distant, just unbearably honest. That's fair, he said finally. I stopped feeling a long time ago. It made things easier. Easier doesn't mean better, she replied. But her voice had lost its edge. He took a slow step closer. You think I don't notice how careful you are? How you hide behind calculations and symmetry. You build bridges to connect other people, Harper, but you don't let anyone cross yours. Her breath caught. You have no idea what you're talking about. Don't I? The space between them shrank to inches. Harper could feel the warmth of his breath, the faint scent of coffee and rain. The air vibrated with everything unsaid. Attraction, frustration, fear. Her heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. Elias, she whispered, a warning or maybe a plea. He reached up, brushing a loose strand of hair from her face. His fingers lingered just long enough to make her forget every rule she'd built around herself. Tell me to stop, he murmured. She didn't. Instead, she lifted her chin, meeting his gaze head-on. For a moment, time fractured, and then he kissed her. It wasn't gentle this time. It was years of restraint breaking, logic dissolving into need. His hand found the back of her neck, pulling her closer, and she melted against him despite every protest screaming in her head. The rain outside hit the windows harder, as if the storm itself couldn't stay quiet. When their lips parted, Harper's breath trembled against his skin. She stepped back quickly, pressing a hand to her chest, eyes wide. This is a mistake. Elias's voice was low, rough. Maybe, but it feels real. She turned away, fighting the chaos inside her. Real doesn't make it right. I know. They stood there, two people who had built their lives on logic, standing in the ruins of their own restraint. Harper reached for her things, her hands shaking slightly. We can't do this, Elias didn't argue. He simply watched her gather her papers, the storm reflecting in his eyes. Harper, he said finally, you don't have to be afraid of what this is. She looked up, meeting his gaze one last time. I'm not afraid, she said softly. I'm protecting what's left of me. Then she walked out, heels clicking against the floor, her silhouette framed by the soft glow of the exit light. Elias stayed behind, staring at the empty doorway, the echo of her words hanging between them. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass, moaning low and distant, like the world itself exhaled in their wake. They both knew the rules. They both broke them anyway. And as Harper disappeared into the storm that night, neither of them realized. The bridge between them had already been built. One stolen breath at a time. For days, the office felt colder. No more lingering glances. No more excuses about reviewing blueprints or clarifying data. Elias Grant kept his distance, his voice calm, clipped, professional. If Harper didn't know better, she would have thought the kiss had been erased from existence. But she knew better. The silence between them wasn't absence. It was tension restrained, grief disguised as control. He spoke to her only during meetings, addressing her as Ms. Linwood like nothing had ever crossed that invisible line. And she responded in kind, her tone precise, polite, rehearsed. From the outside, they were perfect colleagues. But under the surface, cracks were forming. Harper threw herself into work with mechanical precision. Her days became blueprints and numbers, her nights endless revisions. The Evergreen Bridge was entering its final design phase, and she used the workload as armor. Still, every sketch, every equation carried traces of him, his words, his presence, the memory of his hand brushing hers. One afternoon, Leah dropped by Harper's desk, chewing thoughtfully on a pen cap. You've been in robot mode for 2 weeks, she said. Should I be concerned or just impressed? Harper didn't look up. Deadlines don't care about feelings. Right, Leah said slowly. But people do. I'm fine, Leah. You're lying, her friend countered softly. Whatever happened between you and our charming investor, it's written all over your face. Harper froze. There's nothing to write about. Harper, Leah said gently. Are you running from something? Or someone? The question hit too close to home. Harper forced a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I'm building bridges, not burning them. Leah sighed but didn't push. Just don't forget you're human, okay? Even engineers need foundations that aren't made of steel. When Leah walked away, Harper let out a shaky breath she hadn't realized she was holding. That night, she stayed late again. The office lights dimmed to a soft golden hue, humming against the silence. Rain tapped against the windows like a heartbeat, steady, relentless. Harper stood by the scale model of the bridge, tracing the miniature arches with her fingertips. The lines were perfect, the math sound, but something still felt incomplete. Her reflection stared back at her through the glass. Tired and distant, she whispered to no one. You can calculate wind speed and load-bearing weight, but you can't measure the gravity of missing someone. The words hung in the quiet room, fragile and true. When Harper finally made it home, the city was wrapped in mist. Her apartment was neat, impersonal, a space for sleeping, not living. She tossed her bag on the couch, poured herself a glass of water, and stared at the faint glow of the model bridge she kept on her shelf. It had been a gift to herself years ago, a reminder of what she built, of what she believed in. Now, it just looked like a symbol of everything she couldn't fix. Her phone buzzed once, an email notification from work. Not from Elias. Of course not. She turned it face down. Outside, thunder rolled in the distance. Harper sat in the half-dark, her thoughts looping between restraint and regret. She wanted to call him, to say something, anything, but what would she even say? That she missed the way he said her name like it meant something? That she couldn't walk through the office without feeling his ghost beside her? That every time she closed her eyes, she saw the look he gave her right before he kissed her? Like she was the only thing that had ever made sense? No, some things weren't meant to be said out loud. The next morning came gray and heavy. Harper arrived early again, before the noise, before the world could demand anything of her. She turned on the lights, made coffee, and sat at her desk, staring blankly at her screen. Footsteps echoed in the hall. She didn't need to turn around to know who it was. Elias stopped at the doorway, holding 2 paper cups. His tie was slightly loose, his expression unreadable. Peace offering, he said quietly. Harper's lips curved in something halfway between amusement and disbelief. You think coffee fixes everything? Not everything, he replied, stepping closer. But it's a start. She accepted the cup, fingers brushing his for a fleeting moment. The warmth bled through the paper, through her skin, settling somewhere deeper than she wanted to admit. They stood there in silence, the kind that said more than words could. Elias finally broke it. You've been avoiding me. I've been working. He tilted his head slightly. You know that's not what I mean. Harper exhaled, looking anywhere but him. This isn't easy, Elias. You and we crossed a line that shouldn't exist. I know. His voice softened. That doesn't mean I regret it. Her chest tightened. You should, do you? She hesitated, that too long. It doesn't matter what I feel. Of course it matters. No, she said firmly, turning to face him. It can't, because if it does, we lose everything we've worked for. The silence returned, thick, aching, full of things unsaid. Elias nodded slowly. Then I'll stay out of your way. He turned toward the door, and for a moment, she wanted to call him back, to undo her own words. But pride, fear, and reason all chained her in place. Just before he stepped out, Harper's voice broke the quiet. Thank you. For the coffee. He looked over his shoulder, his expression softening. Anytime. Then he was gone. Harper stared at the untouched cup in her hands, the steam curling upward like a promise she wasn't ready to believe. The office felt emptier than ever. Sometimes silence isn't peace, it's punishment. And as Harper sat there, surrounded by everything she'd built, she realized the one thing she couldn't design was a way to stop missing him. The morning came with a gray sky, heavy and quiet, like the world itself was holding its breath. Harper Linwood sat in the conference room surrounded by blueprints and documents, but her mind wasn't on the project. Every line she drew felt mechanical, every number hollow. The silence between her and Elias had stretched too long, too far, until even professionalism felt like a mask that no longer fit. She hadn't spoken to him outside of meetings for days. The office whispered. People noticed. Two brilliant minds, once perfectly in sync, now orbiting each other like strangers with shared secrets. But that afternoon, when the others left for lunch, Elias appeared at the doorway. No coffee this time, no excuses, just him, quiet, unreadable, standing in the soft light that slanted through the blinds. "Harper," he said, voice low. "Do you have a minute?" She looked up, heart skipping. "Always, Mr. Grant," he sighed. "Please don't call me that." She set down her pen. "Then what should I call you?" His eyes met hers. "Elias. Just Elias." He crossed the room, stopping beside the table. "I came to tell you something before the board meeting tomorrow. I'm withdrawing from the Evergreen Bridge project." The words hit her like a sudden gust of wind. "What? Why?" "Because this," he gestured vaguely between them, "isn't sustainable. You deserve to work without whispers or speculation, and I can't pretend that I'm unaffected anymore." Harper rose from her chair, stunned. "You're walking away? That's your solution?" "I'm protecting you," he said quietly. "No," she shot back, her voice trembling. "You're running." Elias exhaled, running a hand through his hair. "You think this is easy for me? Every time I see you, I have to remind myself not to reach for you. I can't lead a project when all I want is the person building it." The room felt too small for both of them, filled with all the things they hadn't said. Harper took a step closer, her voice softer now. "You don't need to quit. We'll be transparent, professional. We'll tell the board ourselves, clear everything up. We can handle this." His brow furrowed. "You'd risk your reputation for that?" "For honesty," she said. "And for something that actually matters." For a moment neither spoke. The sound of rain against the windows filled the air, the same familiar rhythm that had followed them from the start. Elias's voice dropped to a whisper. "Do you really think honesty will save us?" She met his gaze, unwavering. "It's the only thing that can." Something in him broke then. The wall he'd spent years building cracked just enough for her to see the man behind it. The man who wasn't the investor or the strategist, but the one who had kissed her like he'd forgotten how to breathe. "Harper," he began, then stopped, as if the next words cost him everything. "I don't want to lose you," her breath caught. "Then don't." He took a hesitant step closer. "You make it sound simple." "It could be," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "If we stopped being afraid." For the first time in weeks, Elias smiled, not the practiced kind, but something real, unguarded. He reached for her hand slowly, giving her time to pull away. She didn't. When his fingers touched hers, everything she'd been holding back surged to the surface. The ache, the longing, the truth. "I tried to stop thinking about you," he said. "It didn't work." Harper's voice was barely a whisper. "Neither did pretending I didn't feel the same." He exhaled, the weight between them lifting. "So what now?" She smiled faintly. "Now we tell the truth. Whatever happens, happens." And for a brief, shining moment, it felt possible, like the world might bend to make room for them. The next day, they presented their decision to the board. The announcement was calm, professional, transparent. Elias confirmed he had no influence over Harper's evaluations or promotions. Harper reaffirmed the integrity of the project. The board, though cautious, appreciated their honesty. It wasn't easy, but it was done. The tension that had haunted them for weeks seemed to dissolve. For the first time, Harper allowed herself to breathe. But fate has a cruel sense of timing. That evening, Elias knocked on her office door again, his expression serious, eyes shadowed with something she couldn't read. "I need to tell you something," he said. Her heart dropped. "You're not quitting again, are you?" He shook his head. "No, but I received an offer this morning. Helios wants me to lead the new division in Norway, wind energy infrastructure." Harper's lips parted, but no words came. "It's a long-term post," he continued. 2 years minimum. It's the kind of project I've been working toward my entire career." The words hung in the air like a verdict. She looked down at the plans spread across her desk. The bridge they'd built together. The one that connected everything between them. And her chest tightened. "When do you leave?" She asked quietly. "In a month," he said. "If I accept," her voice trembled. "And are you going to?" Elias hesitated. "I don't know, I should. But every reason I have to say yes disappears when I look at you." Tears stung the back of her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. "You can't build your life around me, Elias. You have to go." He shook his head, stepping closer. "You're not just part of my life, Harper. You changed it. You made me remember what passion feels like, not just for work, but for living." She swallowed hard. "If you stay for me, you'll resent me. And if you go, I'll miss you. Either way, we lose." He reached for her hand again, his voice breaking. "Maybe it's not about losing. Maybe it's about choosing what we can't live without." She couldn't answer. The silence that followed was heavy, beautiful, and unbearable all at once. Elias lifted her chin gently, searching her eyes. "I don't want to lose you," he said again. Softer this time, almost a plea. Her tears fell then, silent and unguarded. She smiled through them, heartbreak and love intertwined. "Then don't say goodbye," she whispered. He pulled her close, holding her like he could stop time. For a few fragile seconds, it almost felt like they could. That evening, Harper walked to the bridge site alone. The sun was sinking, painting the river in gold and amber light. The unfinished structure stretched across the water, half complete, half promise. She stood there, wind brushing her hair, eyes reflecting the horizon. Somewhere behind her, the city moved on. Somewhere else, Elias was probably standing before a different kind of crossroad. Harper exhaled slowly, whispering to the fading light. Some bridges are meant to be built, even if you never get to cross them. The sky dimmed, the river glowed, and the day folded into twilight, leaving her silhouette framed against the sunset, alone but unbroken. Love doesn't always demand answers. Sometimes it simply asks who we're willing to become. When the choice isn't between right and wrong, but between holding on and letting go. 2 weeks passed, and Seattle seemed to move on. But Harper Linwood hadn't. She threw herself into work like a woman trying to outrun her own heartbeat. Every morning she arrived early to the bridge site, clipboard in hand, hard hat low to hide the sleepless nights beneath her eyes. She spoke little, smiled less, and if anyone asked about Elias Grant, she'd simply say, "He's in talks with Norway." The truth was, she didn't know. He hadn't called. Not once, and she hadn't reached out either. Pride was a strange kind of armor, one that protected you until it began to suffocate you. Each day without him felt like a page torn from a story she hadn't finished writing. On Sunday morning, the city was quiet, wrapped in a thin veil of mist. Harper drove to her mother's house, something she hadn't done in weeks. The kitchen smelled like cinnamon and warmth. Her mother was watering plants by the window when Harper walked in. "Well," her mother said without looking up, "you finally remembered you have a mother." Harper smiled faintly. "I've been busy." Busy is what people say when they're trying not to feel. Harper sank into a chair, exhaling. "You always did skip the small talk." "I'm too old for pretending," her mother replied, setting down the watering can. "Now tell me, are you running away from a man or from yourself?" Harper rubbed her temples. "It's complicated. It always is." her mother said, sitting across from her. But you know what I think? I'm afraid to ask. You build bridges, Harper, her mother said softly. Maybe it's time you crossed one. Harper looked up, startled by the simplicity of it, and how true it felt. Her mother smiled knowingly. You've spent your whole life designing things that keep people connected. Don't let fear make you the only one left on shore. Harper blinked back tears, her throat tight. I don't even know where he is. Her mother reached across the table, squeezing her hand. Then go find out. The next morning, the sky began to lighten long before the sun broke through. Harper drove to the bridge site early, before the workers, before the noise. The river below shimmered faintly, mirroring the blush of dawn. She walked along the half-finished structure, the air cool and still. Every step echoed with memories. Their first argument about the wind load, their laughter over spilled coffee. That moment they'd almost admitted everything before the world demanded restraint again. Standing there, she whispered into the wind, I hope you chose what makes you happy. Elias. The sound of footsteps behind her made her turn. He was there. Elias stood a few meters away, hands in his pockets, eyes shadowed by fatigue. But when he looked at her, it was as if no time had passed. Harper, he said, voice quiet but sure. She stared, unable to speak. You're supposed to be on a plane. I was, he admitted. But I didn't get on it. Her breath caught. You didn't? He shook his head, stepping closer until the morning light caught his face. I turned down the offer. She blinked, disbelief flickering into something softer. You turned it down? I did, he said simply. I spent 2 weeks trying to convince myself it was the right move, that leaving was logical. That ambition should come first, but every time I looked at that contract, all I could think about was you, and this bridge, and how none of it would mean anything if I had to build it without you. Harper's throat closed around 100 emotions she didn't know how to name. Elias, he smiled faintly, the kind that only comes when someone's made peace with a choice. I realized something. I've spent my whole life investing in structures and companies and futures I could control. But for once, I wanted to invest in something I couldn't. In someone I couldn't. Harper tried to laugh, but it came out as a trembling breath. That's funny, she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. Because I was going to go with you. His eyes widened. You were? She nodded, smiling through her tears. I almost booked a ticket. Told myself maybe I could design wind farms instead of bridges. But then I realized maybe it wasn't about the job or the city. Maybe it was about who I wanted to stand beside, no matter where that was. For a long moment, neither spoke. The river murmured below them, and the first light of sunrise broke across the water. Then Elias laughed. Quiet at first, then freer, lighter. Harper joined in, their laughter mingling with the sound of the wind. When it faded, he reached for her hand. I think we're terrible at timing, she smiled. Maybe timing isn't what matters. He drew her closer, his voice a low whisper near her ear. Then what does? Choice, she said softly. The courage to make one. Elias's hand slipped to her waist, his touch grounding, gentle. Then let's choose this. Right here. No more running, no more excuses. Her heart swelled. No more fear. He leaned in, and when their lips met, it wasn't like the first kiss. That desperate collision of restraint and need. This one was slower, deeper, filled with all the words they'd never needed to say aloud. The wind swept around them, lifting her hair, carrying away the noise of the world until there was only the sound of breath and heartbeat, and the steady hum of something finally right. For the first time, Harper didn't feel like she was falling. She felt like she'd landed. When they finally pulled apart, the sky had turned gold. Elias brushed a tear from her cheek, smiling softly. You know, I never believed in fate before. Me neither, she said. But I believe in blueprints, and somehow we ended up in each other's design. He laughed quietly. I like that. Harper glanced out toward the river, where sunlight danced along the unfinished arches of the bridge. You think we'll finish it on time? He followed her gaze, squeezing her hand. We already have. Hours later, workers arrived to find them still there, standing side by side on the bridge, helmets on, plans spread out between them. To anyone else, it looked like two professionals discussing the day's work. But to them, it was something else entirely. A beginning. The project would continue. The deadlines would come. But nothing about the world felt the same anymore. For once, Harper wasn't calculating or cautious. She was simply present. That evening, the city bathed in amber light. Harper and Elias stood again at the edge of the bridge as the sun dipped low, painting the sky in hues of fire and forgiveness. Elias turned to her, his expression tender. "You know, you're the first person who ever made me question what I thought I wanted." She smiled, resting her head against his shoulder. "You're the first person who ever made me stop questioning." The wind picked up, rushing through the steel beams, carrying with it the scent of rain and river, a promise, a renewal. They stood there until the lights of the city flickered awake beneath them. Two people who spent their lives building safe things finally chose to believe. In risk. In trust. In love. The bridge they built wasn't made of steel or stone, but of choice, and it was strong enough to carry them both. A year later, the bridge was finished. It rose across the river like a ribbon of light and steel. Elegant, unyielding, alive. To the city, it was just another architectural marvel, but to Harper Linwood and Elias Grant, it was something else entirely, a chapter of their lives carved into metal and time. And with its completion came something new. A beginning. They named the firm Linwood and Grant Design. Simple, balanced, like the two of them. Their small office sat on the 12th floor of a refurbished brick building, overlooking the water. It wasn't fancy. The elevator rattled. The coffee machine whined like a dying animal, but it was theirs. Their days were filled with sketches, arguments over load capacity, late-night ideas scribbled on napkins, and stolen kisses between deadlines. Sometimes they disagreed, passionately. "Your math is off," Harper would insist. Leaning over his shoulder, Elias would smirk without looking up. "Or maybe your logic's too rigid. You're impossible." "And yet," he'd say, turning to face her, "you still love me." She'd roll her eyes, but her lips would betray her with a smile. On weekends, they traveled, not for business, but for breath. Norway, Tokyo, Rome. Harper loved bridges. Elias loved the stories that built them. Together, they wandered through cities hand in hand, pointing out design flaws, admiring old structures, arguing over art and food and philosophy. At night, they'd fall asleep in unfamiliar hotel rooms, the hum of foreign streets outside, the comfort of familiarity beside them. They didn't need grand declarations anymore. Their love existed in the quiet things. The way she reached for his hand while driving, the way he left coffee on her drafting table every morning, the way silence between them never felt empty. One Friday evening, the office was drenched in sunset. Papers were scattered, blueprints rolled open like maps of their shared chaos. Harper was still hunched over her desk, lost in thought, when Elias appeared behind her holding a small velvet box. "Before you panic," he said, "it's not what you think." She turned, eyebrows raised. "You're giving me a jewelry box and telling me not to panic?" He smiled, soft, nervous, sincere. "Just open it." Inside lay a thin gold ring with a single emerald, small, understated, glowing like captured light. Harper stared at it, her breath catching. "Elias, it's not a proposal," he said quickly. "It's a promise." She looked up, eyes glistening. "A promise? That I'll keep building with you," he said. "Whatever it is. Bridges, companies, life. I don't need vows or papers to prove it. Just this, us." The air between them shimmered with quiet emotion. Harper picked up the ring, tracing the smooth edge with her thumb. "Then," she whispered, smiling through the ache in her chest, "it's the only promise I'll never break." Elias exhaled softly, relief and love colliding in his gaze. "Good, because you're stuck with me now." She slipped the ring onto her finger, the emerald catching the last of the sunset. "That's the point," he laughed, pulling her close. "Do you ever regret it? Choosing this? Every day," she teased. resting her head against his chest. "And then you breathe funny, or make that ridiculous coffee, or look at me like that. And I remember why I don't." His laugh rumbled softly against her cheek. "You're terrible at romance. I'm an engineer," she said. "I build, I don't perform." He tilted her chin up. "You build better than anyone I know." The kiss that followed was slow and certain. The kind of kiss that didn't need fireworks, because it had foundation. That summer, Linwood and Grant secured their first major independent contract, a pedestrian bridge connecting two neighborhoods divided by an old river canal. It wasn't grand or glamorous, but it mattered. Harper spent long nights at the site, watching lights dance on the water, sketching revisions with messy hands. One night, as dawn approached, Elias joined her on the platform with 2 cups of coffee. He stood beside her in silence, their shoulders brushing. "You ever think about how far we've come?" he asked quietly. Harper smiled. "Every day," he nodded toward the horizon. "You think we're lucky?" She shook her head. "No, we built this." Later, when the bridge finally opened to the public, crowds gathered to walk across it. Children ran ahead, couples lingered, photographers captured the morning light glinting off the metal beams. Harper stood at the edge, hand in Elias's, watching people cross, watching her design become something that connected lives. She thought of the past year, the chaos, the choices, the nights filled with fear and longing, and standing there, she realized something profound. "I used to build bridges out of steel and concrete," she said softly. "But the strongest one I ever made was the one between 2 hearts." Elias squeezed her hand. "Then I'm proud to be part of your architecture." Harper laughed through a tear. "You're ridiculous." "Comes with the job," he said, grinning. As the crowd dispersed, the 2 of them stayed. The morning sun rose higher, casting gold across the water. They leaned against the railing, hands intertwined, wind threading through their hair. No more fear. No more distance. Just 2 people who had learned that love wasn't about finding perfection. It was about building it. In a world where everything can break, they chose to build. Not walls. Not promises made of paper, but bridges forged in trust, tested by time, and strengthened by choice. The camera would fade slowly. Harper and Elias standing on their bridge, the skyline of Seattle glowing behind them, the river below alive with light. She turned to him, her voice soft. "So, what's next?" He smiled, eyes warm. "Whatever we build next, together." They stood in silence, watching the sunrise paint the city gold. Sometimes love isn't planned. It isn't perfect. It's built. One choice, one risk, one heartbeat at a time. As the first light of morning kissed the water, Harper and Elias stood hand in hand on the bridge they'd built, a bridge not just of steel and stone, but of faith, forgiveness, and love. No promises spoken, no vows needed, just 2 hearts that chose to stay and to keep building together. Thank you so much for listening to Blueprints of the Heart here on Veil of Hearts, where every story reminds us that love isn't found. It's built. If this story touched your heart, let us know in the comments. Do you believe love can be designed, or does it simply happen? Don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next tale where love finds its quiet way home. Until next time, this is Veil of Hearts, where every heartbeat tells a story.